Today marks 1 month since that toxic train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Still, questions remain about what happened and what's going to happen. Here's Josh Croup with Why It Matters.
Things haven't been the same in parts of eastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania since February 3rd, around 8:55 p.m. Now, a lot has happened in and around East Palestine since then. A train derailed, residents evacuated, explosions were feared, a controlled release of chemicals was conducted. People started returning home, people started reporting illnesses, Norfolk Southern started paying up, more federal help showed up. A health clinic opened, the former president visited, so did the transportation secretary, who called for change. Crews started removing hazardous waste, then stopped, found new disposal sites, then started again. Through it all, residents have demanded information. For weeks, environmental officials have said the water and air are safe. Some residents, some activists still aren't buying it.
I'm sorry, something is not right here.
There's been no shortage of information or misinformation. There's been no shortage of frustration, like at a town hall Thursday night with Norfolk Southern and the EPA.
We're going to clean up the site.
There's been no shortage of national news coverage, especially after images of that toxic plume went viral. But after 1 month, what happens next? Testing will continue, cleanup will continue, state and federal investigations will pick up, the national media will inevitably pack up. The government and the rail company assure residents they won't. The plea this week from the state senator who represents the area to those officials.
It is a marathon. And please don't leave us. Please stay with us. We can heal. We can be whole again.
Toledo could have been East Palestine. This disaster could have happened anywhere. A lot has happened in a month. But what happens next, what change happens next, is worthy of your attention. And that's why it matters. Josh Croup, 13 ABC, Action News.
Early voting began this week for Ohio's statewide special election. There's only one issue on the ballot. Issue 1, but groups on both sides of this debate are spending millions to let you know the election has consequences for a number of issues. Here's Josh Croup with Why It Matters.
Politicians to call a special election this August.
There's a lot of noise out there about issue 1, and it's about far more than just one issue. But what issues? It depends on who you listen to. On one side, you hear the August 8th special election is about affecting efforts to protect abortion access, funding public schools, and ending racial violence. On the other side, it's about preventing abortions on demand, unlimited sex changes for kids, gun rights, and parents' rights. Let's zoom out and remind you what you're actually voting on with issue 1. A yes vote will make it harder to change Ohio's constitution, raising the threshold for issues to pass from a simple majority to 60%. It would also make the process to collect signatures to put an issue on the ballot for citizens more difficult. That's why you're hearing about every other issue under the sun here, because this could impact future efforts for citizens to change laws through constitutional amendments. But one issue rises to the top.
This election is 100% about abortion. Rather than having a fair election about abortion rights in Ohio, Ohio Republicans are once again trying to rig the game.
Ohioans will likely vote in November on whether to make abortion a constitutionally protected right. If issue 1 passes, abortion would need 60% support instead of 50% on election day to pass. That's why Republicans scheduled this special election for August 8th, ahead of that vote in November. But the GOP public messaging isn't always going directly after abortion.
That's what the Democrats want to make it about. They think that's a winning message for them. It's not. For us, it comes down to protecting our Constitution from special interests and outside groups.
Friday, the group Protect Women Ohio announced a $2 million ad buy in support of issue 1, but the ad doesn't mention the Constitution.
Trans ideology in classrooms and encourage sex changes for kids.
As some anti-issue 1 groups advertise abortion as the issue at the heart of the election.
They're trying to rig the rules to lock in Ohio's extreme abortion ban.
Still, at the end of the day, it is one issue on the ballot that can have a domino effect on other issues. And that's why it matters. Josh Croup, 13 Action News.
Ohio's new distracted driving law goes into effect next week. Advocates hope that it will save lives and make roads safer. Here's Josh Croup with Why It Matters.
Sorry about that. I was texting my mom. But at least I'm doing it here and not on the road like this person. Right now in Ohio, a police officer can't pull this driver over or this one because they see them texting and driving. But that's about to change. On Tuesday, Ohio's new distracted driving law goes into effect. If an officer sees you simply holding your phone away from your ear or even swiping on your smartwatch, they can pull you over. Currently, they have to do what this state trooper did. Wait for the driver to commit another offense first.
You had your phone up in your hand.
Troopers will issue warnings for the first 6 months. And when he signed this bill into law, Governor Mike DeWine said this is about more than just pulling people over and handing out tickets.
It's about changing the culture around distracted driving and normalizing the fact that distracted driving is just as unacceptable and just as dangerous as drunk driving.
There are exceptions. You can hold it to your ears for a call, you can use it at a red light, and you can have it on speakerphone as long as you're not holding it. The goal is to make roadways safer, something personal for the governor, whose daughter died in a car crash in 1993. It's also personal to Columbus sportscaster Dom Tiberi, whose daughter also died in a crash.
We don't want any other families to go through the nightmare of losing a child.
In the last 5 years, state data shows nearly 40% of distracted crashes involved drivers younger than 24.
We are losing our youngest and our brightest on the highways.
And that's why it matters. Josh Krupp, 13 ABC Action News.
Saturday marks 1 year since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade and reversed 50 years of legal protections for abortion.
But 1 year later, the issue is still far from settled. Here's 13 Action News' Josh Krupp with why it matters.
The issue was sent back to the states until it wasn't. This time last year, we were talking about the reaction to the news that the U.S. Supreme Court reversed Roe v. Wade.
This is a moment 50 years in the making.
This decision is an outrage.
Within hours, Ohio's Attorney General was in court and got the state's 6-week abortion ban instated. Abortions dropped by 65% in Ohio in the months after the ruling, one of the steepest drops in the country. But the law has been on hold since last September and will likely head to the Ohio Supreme Court. Voters in Ohio will likely decide whether to enshrine abortion rights into the state's constitution this November.
We know that Ohio is a pro-life state, and we just look forward to proving that in the polls.
Currently, abortion access will need at least 50% support at the ballot box to pass in Ohio. But in August, voters will decide if that bar should be raised to 60%. It's an effort by Republicans to make it harder to change the state's constitution.
There's no doubt about it. Ohio is ground zero for the fight for abortion rights in this country.
Voters in other states have preserved abortion access since Roe was overturned, including Michigan and Kansas. But neither state saw more than 60% of its voters support the issue. As for the U.S. Supreme Court, its role in abortion access might not be done, despite kicking it back to the states 1 year ago, as efforts to ban an abortion pill move through the courts.
Advocates will argue for states to have power as a means to achieve a policy end, right? So they were talking about wanting to send it back to the states last year, but this year they're talking about federal laws trying to ban access to medication abortions all over the country.
No matter where you stand on the issue, it is one that has dominated the discourse over the past 12 months.
We're just in the middle of this, and we really don't know where this is going.
And we're far from seeing the end of the debate or the fallout, and that's why it matters. Josh Krupp, 13 Action News.
Failed banking executives faced a grilling in the U.S. Senate this week, including from both of Ohio's senators. They're looking for accountability after 3 of the largest banking failures in the country's history. Here's Josh Krupp with why it matters.
Think of what you could do with $20 billion. In Ohio, you could start by buying the Browns, Bengals, Cavaliers, Guardians, Reds, Blue Jackets, FC Cincinnati, and Columbus Crew, and still have nearly $7 billion left over to head up to Detroit and buy the Lions, Tigers, and Pistons. Oh my. $20 billion is money that the FDIC doesn't have anymore after it bailed out Silicon Valley Bank earlier this year. Its former CEO faced the Senate Banking Committee this week, chaired by Ohio's Sherrod Brown. Senators didn't hold back.
Can you agree that that was a really dumb move?
This was bone deep, down to the marrow, stupid.
Your opinion on what is a responsibly managed bank is now laughable.
It was the first time SVB CEO has spoken publicly since the bank's failure shocked financial markets and scared borrowers across the country. 2 other banks subsequently failed. The FDIC stepped in to protect people's cash. Now, the Biden administration has said taxpayers won't have to foot that bill, but there are still concerns that other banks will ultimately pass on higher fees to borrowers to make up the FDIC's losses. Back to SVB CEO, who sold $3.5 million in stock weeks before the bank failed. He claims he didn't know the bank was going bad and wouldn't answer a question from Ohio's J.D. Vance about if his trades were ethical.
Stuff like that can't happen, and when it does happen, the federal government, the taxpayers need to be able to get a little bit of that money back.
Senator Brown says he's working on a bill that would go after the compensation of executives from failed banks.
Our bank system is solid, it works well, but there are people that are both greedy and incompetent, and when they do that, Middle-class workers are squeezed, and we can't let these bankers run off into the sunset with their ill-gotten gains.
Regulators have also vowed tougher rules are coming for banks. So if one fails because of bad business practices, there are consequences and accountability instead of a big payday. And that's why it matters. Josh Krupp, 13 ABC Action News.
There's an arms race happening in the tech world with artificial intelligence.
And experts say it's advancing faster than most people can keep up with. Here's Josh Krupp with why it matters.
This person doesn't exist. Neither does this one, nor this one. These images of reporter dogs weren't taken by a photographer. This art wasn't designed by a human. All of these images were generated in seconds by artificial intelligence, or AI. By now, you've probably heard of ChatGPT, the AI chatbot that's taken the world by storm since its November release. It can write essays, analyze pictures, and even pass the bar exam now, and it's improving every day.
This technology is moving very, very quickly, and I think it's a lot more advanced than most people realize.
Future updates will allow you to have ChatGPT accomplish tasks for you. You'll be able to book a flight with it, a dinner reservation too for an Italian restaurant, a hotel room, and text all the information to your spouse in the blink of an eye. Microsoft is already integrating it into its search engine and Word. Google rolled out its own version this week.
There's a giant arms race going on in Silicon Valley right now among tech companies to stick these chatbots, stick these AI products into stuff we use every day.
And with new tech comes new concerns. Experts worry that AI can help scammers launch more sophisticated and accelerated attacks. There are fears that it will replace jobs or fuel misinformation campaigns. The White House has expressed concerns that algorithms could lead to unwanted discrimination in things like hiring practices.
I don't think anyone knows where this is really going.
While most of the tech world is trying to keep pace with AI, only a handful of states have legislation drafted to address AI concerns. No federal legislation appears imminent. The AI genie is already out of the bottle, so whether you like it or not, whether you're ready or not, here it comes, poised to be part of your daily life in some way, shape, form, or fashion, whether guardrails are in place or not. And that's why it matters. Josh Krupp, 13 ABC Action News.
This week, Ohio's former House Speaker and GOP chair were found guilty in what prosecutors called the largest corruption case in Ohio history. The verdict could have effects that extend beyond Ohio politics. Here's Josh Krupp with why it matters.
They say more money, more problems. Bring on the problems, said former Ohio House Speaker Larry Householder, who for 2.5 years has insisted money he took was no big deal. But a jury of his peers convicted him and former state GOP chair Matt Borges this week in a pay-to-play bribery scheme. Over the past 7 weeks, federal prosecutors explained in court how the two men secretly funneled $60 million from First Energy through a nonprofit organization to help elect Householder as Speaker, a position he used to pass a bailout bill for failing coal and nuclear power plants. Householder argued this was politics as usual and didn't expect this verdict.
Why were you surprised? Oh, because I'm not guilty.
Political corruption has been around ever since there's been political history.
Was this politics as usual? It kind of has been, though maybe not to this extent. In 2010, the U.S. Supreme Court decision in the Citizens United case opened the floodgates for so-called dark money in politics, allowing businesses and big donors to secretly support candidates through nonprofit groups. But prosecutors showed Householder's group went a step farther, detailing how he and Borges personally benefited financially from it, saying the ex-speaker sold the state house.
It's a real warning about the trouble you can get into trying to use these new channels that became available for fundraising in the post-Citizens United world.
This new campaign finance world may now have some limits because of this verdict. And at the end of the day, big money is still spent in politics to influence how your representatives act once they get into office. But as we saw this week, more money, more problems. And in this case, one problem is a maximum of 20 years in federal prison. And that's why it matters. Josh Krupp, 13 ABC Action News.